get this out of the way, just so you know where I'm coming from. I loved the last Tomb Raider game in 2013. It was the game that finally made me into a Tomb Raider fan after years of being mostly indifferent to the series, and it completely refreshed the franchise after spending a number of years trying to be relevant again following its first disastrous appearance on PS2. A sequel was inevitable, so now here we are with Rise of the Tomb Raider. This time around, rather than being thrust into a desperate survival situation like in the previous game, Lara Croft has taken a great big crunchy bite out of Indiana Jones's fedora and gone and plonked herself into one, ensuring that she has no one but herself to blame when she gets her shit ruined. Still, at least Lara has finally figured out how to wear winter jackets in cold weather. Speaking of Indiana Jones, the plot itself is oddly similar to The Last Crusade. Lara is looking for an artifact that is so vague in its description that it may as well be the Holy Grail, and proceeds to murder and collateral damage her way towards it. And yet we're supposed to hate the bad guys in this for doing the exact same thing, despite the fact that they actually have a coherent idea of what they're going to do with it, whilst Lara's just doing this because she has daddy issues. Along the way, there's a group of locals who have guarded the Grail for millennia, including a Jesus Christ type figure who turns out to be that 1,000-year-old Grail Knight who never, in all the intervening years, learnt about wet shaving. And take a wild guess, do you think someone will actually take away the Holy Grail at the end of this plot? Or will the hero undergo some kind of snap revelation and dramatically smash and or lose it because the world isn't ready? Yep, you've pretty much guessed how this ends already. So if you enjoyed the original Tomb Raider, by which I mean the 2013 reboot, not the very first game that came out in 1996, because how cock and confusing does it get when the reboot and the original have the same fucking names, then you'll no doubt enjoy this one as well, mainly because it's more of the same. One part huge collectathon to one part shooting and blowing shit up. As before, I liked the bits when you're, raiding tombs, climbing around and solving ancient puzzles. But with that usual sterling logic of AAA games these days, these bits are mostly optional, whereas the combat you're, stuck with. More tombs could definitely have been included in this game, and would it really hurt to have them part of the main game rather than just as a side note? The phrase optional challenge tomb really does say it all. I actually found that I died a lot less during the combat sections on this game than I did with the previous one. It's possible that I was more used to the combat mechanics from my time spent on the previous game. Of course, Lara can now heal herself during combat and can craft Molotov cocktails, which is a big difference. But it does seem that the developers decided to make this game a lot easier this time round. Between the assault rifle, shotgun, melee attacks, stealth attacks, crafted bombs, crafted Molotovs, arrows, poison arrows, bomb arrows, and a partridge in a pear tree, you are pretty much unstoppable. You can pretty much finish the critical path using nothing but what the game hands you and 2 bits of old twig, although you only have limited ammo during the final battle. So spending the time fast travelling back to previous camps to restock was a complete waste of fucking time, and quite frustrating as well. And at one point you even get your weapons taken off you, so in the final battle you have to resort to throwing tin cans. What exactly was the point of arming us to the teeth throughout the entire game, only to then take everything off us at the end? It's certainly less over the top in terms of violence and gore as well. Oh sure, you can still stick a flaming arrow or two in some baddie's jugular veins, but the horror movie-esque moments like swimming around in a lake of human remains are gone. As are the snuff movie style deaths, apart from the occasional impaling. The violence has been toned down quite a lot since the last game. This is a good thing, as the violence in the last game was so over the top it became hard to take seriously, and it didn't really fit in with the same tone as the rest of the Tomb Raider series either. The sequel also cuts down on the number of silly quick-time events that seemed really out of place in a Tomb Raider game before. Unfortunately, they've not eradicated them entirely, as we get one right at the end of the bloody game. Gee, thanks lads! Rise of the Tomb Raider came out on the very same day as Fallout 4, and in terms of longevity, the superior game really is Fallout 4, as just like in the last game, there is very little to keep you playing Rise of the Tomb Raider once you've completed the main storyline. Oh sure, you could go out looking for all the individual relics, documents and other things that the Easter Bunny dropped all over the place, but after that, nothing really. And it's not as if getting all the collectibles counts towards as much now, other than to say, yay, I got 100% completion. It's not as if you really needed to spend hours searching for all those elusive survival caches and coin caches. The audio logs, relics and documents are good for providing a bit of backstory, but they're hardly essential. The previous game had a multiplayer mode to keep you going, even if it did feel rather tagged on, but at least more effort went into that than what Rise of the Tomb Raider has. Expeditions. Basically, play through the same sections of the exact same game again, only now you can use these silly playing cards to enable things like weaker or stronger enemies, big heads, enemies are always on fire, and you can use chickens as arrows. Good for a couple of chuckles, I suppose, but that novelty soon wears off very quickly. And although the bronze cards give you a few extras, if you want anything particularly interesting, then the silver and gold cards will actually cost you some real-life money, not just in-game credits. Yes, folks, they've somehow managed to work microtransactions into Tomb Raider. Bastards. I wouldn't have minded the multiplayer option still being in there, just as long as they actually did something with it other than it being a mindless shooter, like I said in my review of the previous game. I feel that with the unique environments in the game, so much more could have been done with the multiplayer mode. How about competitive rock climbing? Or a race to see who can raid their tomb the quickest, or collect the most salvage within a given time? How about a section of the game where a second player can control one of Lara's comrades and drop in, join in to help you out? It doesn't always have to be a mindless shoot 'em up for the multiplayer mode. Come on guys, a bit more thought could have gone into this. At the end of the day, I did still really enjoy Rise of the Tomb Raider. A lot of improvements was made over the previous game, although there are still a few niggling issues that need to be ironed out before the next game. The game was a great present to get over Christmas, and a good portion of the festive period was spent playing it. However, by the time we got to the new year, I was already thinking about trading it in at my local computer exchange because, basically, I'd done everything. If you have a choice between getting Rise of the Tomb Raider or Fallout 4, then go for Fallout, as you'll have many more hours of enjoyment out of it. We're still having it now. But by all means, still make sure you give Rise of the Tomb Raider a play at some point. To some extent, it can feel like an add-on pack to the first game, but that's not altogether a bad thing when the 2013 reboot was so appealing and playable. I personally can't wait for the next installment, but I hope that more is done with the game next time. In short, Rise of the Tomb Raider gets a thumbs up from the Big Daddy D.